thanks, Bill, for joining us once again. And we've got about 20 folks online here today. Hopefully some more will be joining us. I had some notes about some folks not getting done with school until about 3:20 or 3:15 on some days. So, session number 1, I just want to let everyone know, is on our boys golf page. If you go there, Deb's done a great job and she's here with me helping, but that whole first session is on our boys golf page, and you can share that with anyone. You can share that with your kids and things like that. There isn't any problem doing something like that. The issue is just not having them with you while showing this, since we aren't in season yet. So today, what Bill's going to go over in this second session he's going to go and talk more about tee areas, and then bunkers, penalty areas, and relief options from penalty areas, putting greens, a little bit more about the flag stick, and balls lost or out of bounds, stroke and distance, and provisional balls. And then if there's anything else that comes along with all of this. Just a reminder, everybody is muted. So if you want to use either the Q&A or the chat features, they're available during the meeting. Certainly Bill and I are glad to respond to any questions afterwards, or if you want to send them during it via email. And we'll do our best to evaluate those and try to prioritize everyone and get those answered best that we can. Just don't use that raise your hand feature with this. Having everyone muted keeps the sound out and keeps things from disrupting the presentation. And again, tomorrow, or as soon as we can, we found that it does take us a little bit of time just to do some editing out of that first half hour, mostly of each of these videos. So we'll post that as soon as we get that ready tomorrow. And then sometime tomorrow afternoon, I'll also get that third invite out for next week, Tuesday, from 3 to 4 for the final session. So thanks everyone for joining. And with that, I'm going to send it over to Bill Linneman once again. And Bill, thanks again for taking time. Great chatting.
Oh, no problem. With everyone's weather the way it is in Wisconsin, it's not much more to do than discuss rules. If you recall last week, for those of you that were part of the presentation last week, we spent a little bit of time talking about the course and the 5 areas of the course. And those were the teen area, bunkers, penalty areas, putting greens, and if it wasn't any one of those 4, the rest of the course is called the general area. Well, today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the different rules that apply to the 4 specific areas of the course. We'll start off with the teen area, talk a little bit about that, then we'll talk about bunkers, then we'll talk about penalty areas and the relief procedures from penalty areas, and then finally we'll talk about the ball lost or out of bounds, which is a major change for 2019. Proceeding under stroke and distance, and then the provisional ball rule. But we'll begin with the teen area, like every hole does begin. Obviously, the teen area is the area the player must play from in starting play of a hole. And one of the things that's great about this picture, if you look at the 2 Disney tee markers, you can see that the forward edge of the tee isn't the biggest part of the tee, it's the forwardmost edge. So as we look at it, the left side of each of Mickey's ear, and the teen area is the width of the tee markers, wide, and 2 club lengths in depth. And we talked a little bit last week about how a player's club length determines the size of the teen area, or at least the depth of it, and the size of the relief area. And a club length is deemed to be the longest club in the player's bag of the 14 that they're playing with, other than their putter. So you can see it's always a rectangular area, and this also drives home the point. It's the outermost edges on the forward part and the outermost edges on the outside points of the tee marker. And the tee markers are obviously set by the committee in terms of width, and the player's club lengths determine the depth. So a player who might be 7 feet tall and have longer clubs is certainly going to have a bigger teeing area than a junior golfer that might only be 9 or 10 years old. But that's okay. We'll move on. One of the things that's new for this year is that the teeing area rules apply whenever a player is required or allowed to play a ball from the teeing area. And what do we mean by required? Well, when I start play of a hole, I'm required to play a ball from the teeing area. What is allowed to play a ball from the teeing area? Well, if I'm playing a par 3 hole and I hit my first shot on that hole into a penalty area, what used to be called a water hazard, one of my options is to proceed under stroke and distance. And because that stroke was made from the teeing area, I can return to the teeing area. So that would be an example of allowed. So that would include anytime the player is playing, starting play of a hole. It would also include if the player will play again from the teeing area under a rule. Another example of that, if I hit a tee shot and my ball becomes lost or out of bounds, I have to return to the teeing area under Rule 18, and we'll see that at the end of today's presentation. Another example where the teeing area rules apply is if my ball is in play in the teeing area after a stroke or after the player has taken relief. So this is a major change with the rules, and on the face of it, what do those words mean? Well, I'll give you an example. If you look at the picture, you can see the player has made a swing or a stroke at the ball. Hopefully you can see the tee that the ball had been on about 3 inches behind the ball, and the player has hit a booming tee shot of 3 inches. And his ball is still in the area that defines what is known as the teeing area. So now his ball is in play after a stroke. Well, last year I would have been forced to play the ball on the ground because my ball was now in play. Because now they're trying to make the rules consistent for each of the areas of the course, as long as my ball is in the teeing area, whether to begin play of a hole or after making a stroke such that it's in play, if I'm in that rectangle between the tee markers and within the area that's 2 club lengths in depth, I literally, or that player in the picture, after essentially almost whiffing the ball, could lift up that ball, lift up that tee, and go tee that ball up in a different part of the teeing area, and he would simply be making his next stroke. He could also lift that ball up and put it right back on the tee from which he had just hit. My point is that because I'm in the teeing area, I can play from anywhere within the teeing area and take certain actions, which we'll visit in just a second. These teeing area rules apply only from the teeing area that I am playing in starting play of a hole. What I mean by that is if you have a competition and you tell the players they're all playing from the white tee marker, or excuse me, the blue tee markers, the white tee markers, the gold tee markers, the red tee markers ahead of that are not part of the teeing area. Even if they're on that same strip of grass that I'm trying to circle with the cursor, that is essentially prepared teeing area turf, but the teeing area is the rectangle formed by the tee markers and the 2 club lengths. So if you're in a teeing area of another set of tees, you're not in the teeing area, you would be in the general area. And they kind of point to another teen area on this hole and perhaps the teen area of the next hole. Once I'm in the teen area, there are certain rules that apply under Rule 6. And the first of which is, when is my ball in the teen area? If it is in the teen area, I can either tee the ball or play it from the ground. I could take certain actions to improve the conditions affecting the stroke in the teen area, provided those are made on the ground. If I'm in the teen area, the tee markers themselves cannot be moved. Once I'm outside of the teen area, those tee markers are then movable obstructions. Also, a ball is not in play until a stroke is made. And an example of what that means is if I hit a ball out of bounds from the teen area and I had to play again, and I teed up another ball and I made a swing at it and it was on the ground, even though the ball is on the ground and under the old rules would have been in play, because I'm still in the teen area, until I make a stroke at that ball and get it out of the teen area, that ball is not in play until I've made a stroke and the ball leaves the teen area. And then the last thing is, which we're not really going to go over, is when a ball in play lies in the teen area, and that's the same thing as when a ball is in the teen area. So first of all, when is a ball in the teen area? Here we have two blue tee markers. You can see the outermost and forwardmost edges are defined by lines, and then that area is 2 club lengths in depth. The first ball that I'm circling here, Tom, can you see the cursor?
Yes, yep.
Okay, that first ball, all of the ball is outside of the teen grounds, so that ball is not in the teen area. This ball, while part of it is on the outside and part is on the inside, even though it may be above the ground on a tee, that still would be in the teen area. Obviously, the ball on the right here is outside the teen area, and this ball back here, though part of it lies outside, it is deemed to be inside the teen area. This back ball is obviously, all of it is outside the teen area. And here we have another ball that is partially in, partially out, but anytime if part of the ball is in the teen area, the ball is deemed to be in the teen area, and then any teen area rules would apply. So I also want you to know that you can obviously stand outside the teen area to make a stroke at a ball in the teen area. But what this player in this example right here could not do is to move that tee marker in any way, shape, or form purposely. I mean, accidentally is one thing, but he could not purposely move that tee marker because it might interfere. Does anyone know who this player is? This player was a U.S. amateur champion, and he just finished second at Bay Hill. That's Fitzpatrick.
Fitzpatrick. Didn't
So,
recognize him.
I can take certain actions in the teen area before making a stroke at a ball in the teen area, whether it's in play or not, and I can improve the conditions affecting the stroke, provided those conditions are on the ground in the teen area. And we'll kind of see what I mean by that. One of the things I'm allowed to do, whether my ball's in play or not, if my ball is in the teen area, I can alter the surface of the ground in the teen area. I can make an indentation, you know, with the club, or I can, like a field goal kicker when we were little, you used to kind of take your heel and dig a hole and set the ball on that. Here you have a gal that's famous on the LPGA tour, certainly not a superintendent favorite, but a fan favorite for sure. And her tendency is to take her driver, slam a piece of turf backwards, and she puts the ball on top of the turf. And does anyone know her name? Laura Davies, that is. Another thing you can do is you can move, bend, or break anything growing within the teen area that's attached or growing in the ground in the teen area. So I can move or break or bend grass. I can move or break or remove weeds or any other natural objects. If there were dandelions or anything like that, I'm allowed to do that, whereas outside of the teen area, I'm not allowed to do that if it improves the conditions affecting the stroke. I'm also in the teen area allowed to remove or press down sand or loose soil. And we'll see I'm also allowed to do that on the putting green. But other than the teen area and the putting green, I'm not allowed to remove or press down sand or loose soil. I can only do it when that sand or loose soil is in the teen area or on the putting green. And lastly, I can tell you in 30 years, I've never seen a player do this, but you're allowed to remove dew, frost, or water in the teen area. And this picture is a picture of one of the USGA rules staff people basically taking a towel and mopping up dew. While you can do this in the teen area, you're not allowed to do it anywhere else on the course, including the putting green. And in taking any of those 4 actions, I'm not allowed to take any other action to improve the conditions affecting the stroke. So what does that mean? Well, if there were some tree branches overhanging the teen area, while I am allowed to improve conditions affecting the stroke on the ground in the teen area, I would not be allowed to break off branches that might interfere with the area of my intended swing. That would be improving the conditions affecting the stroke. And if I did that, I would get the general penalty, which is 2 strokes in stroke play. So the conditions affecting the stroke that I can improve are the things listed under Rule 6.2b, and they're also always on the ground. So we'll move on to bunkers unless there's any questions on the teen area. A lot of people
Not seen anything so far, Bill.
You know, a lot of people think that that's very fascinating under the rules, that if I make a swing at a ball and my ball still lies in the teen area, I could essentially pick it up and put it back on a tee. The one thing I can say, whatever you think about it, at least the rules within that area of the course are now consistent. I have yet to meet a player who is thinking logically after making a swing at a ball and having his ball come to rest still in the teen area from which he was starting play of a hole. It meant that his tee shot was no more than 2 club lengths long. We'll move on to bunkers, and new for 2019. If you look at this picture, probably the most noticeable change is this spot right here. Whereas the old rules said that a wall or a face of a bunker not covered in sand was part of the bunker, now under the new rules, the only part of the bunker that counts as being the bunker is that part where the ball would be touching sand or where sand would be. So here we have a ball obviously touching sand and in a bunker. Here we have a ball in the earthen lip. There's no sand. This is not sand. It's either a stacked face stacked sod face, or it's like an earthen wall. That would not be considered part of the bunker. So if it's not part of the bunker and he's not on the green, what part of the course is he on? This player would be considered to be right here in the general area. This player would be considered to be in the bunker where the green check mark is. This ball right here, if I'm on an island of grass within a bunker, I'm not deemed to be in the bunker. Why? Because my ball is lying on grass that's not touching sand in the bunker. So I would not be in the bunker. I would be in the general area where this X is on the island. And the point where the ball is on top of the rake is to show the point that had my ball not been on the rake, it would be touching part of the sand within the bunker. So if my ball were lying on an obstruction or a loose impediment, but not touching sand, I'm deemed to be in the bunker if not for the loose impediment or the movable obstruction, my ball would have been touching sand. Couple of videos we're going to come up here, and now the big change in bunkers, I can now remove loose impediments in a bunker without penalty, and I can move or touch sand while removing loose impediments if I do so reasonably. And here's a video.
Under the 2019 rules, there is no penalty for moving loose impediments when your ball is in a bunker. However, some bunker restrictions continue to exist.
I don't know if y'all saw that video, but obviously this player here has absolutely no concern for the next player that might be in the bunker. You know, you're allowed to move them or remove them, so that's perfectly fine. But you'd like to think that the players might be thinking about someone else coming along behind them. One of the things regarding loose impediments, if I remove a loose impediment and the removal of the loose impediment causes my ball to move, I'm going to get a one-stroke penalty unless that action occurs when my ball is lying in the teeing area or it's lying on the putting green. So what that means is if I remove a loose impediment and it causes my ball to move, when my ball is lying in the general area, a bunker, or a penalty area, there is now a one-stroke penalty under the loose impediment or Rule 9.4 for causing my ball to move in the process of removing a loose impediment. Tom, both the WIAA, at least up till the state tournament, and I know we had a local rule that provided for stones in bunkers. Last year, we deemed that stones in bunkers were movable obstructions. And under the movable obstruction rule, if I move a movable obstruction and it causes my ball to move, no matter where that happens on the course, there's no penalty. But now there is no local rule like that. A stone in a bunker is a natural object, therefore it's a loose impediment, and I'm allowed to remove it or move it. But unlike when a stone in a bunker was a movable obstruction last year, there is a penalty if the removal of the loose impediment causes the ball to move when my ball is in a bunker. Hopefully we're clear on that. I do have some remaining restrictions that have always been in play with regard to bunkers. I can't test the condition. I can't ground my club near the ball. I can't touch the sand in making a practice swing. And I cannot touch the sand during my backswing. And people wonder why I can't touch the sand during the backswing. And that's because if I were to look at the definition of the word stroke is the forward movement of the club made to strike the ball. So your backswing is not part of your stroke. And that's the reason why that is a penalty. But here's a good video showing the actions that you cannot take.
Some bunker restrictions continue to exist. For example, you are still not allowed to touch the sand with your club, behind or in front of your ball, when making a practice swing, or when making your backswing.
So those restrictions remain intact, and While I am allowed to remove loose impediments in a bunker, I'm also allowed to move movable obstructions in a bunker. The most common movable obstruction in a bunker is a rake. I am not allowed to take any of the actions listed under remaining restrictions. Testing the condition of the bunker, what might that be? Oh, I might take a club and probe, or take a rake and probe to see how hard or firm the sand is. I'm not allowed to do that. What am I allowed to do? Well, we're going to see in a second. There are some relaxed restrictions with regard to bunkers, and we'll see the actions that I can take. So under Rule 12.2b, when touching a sand does not result in a penalty. So what this means is that these are the actions that I'm allowed to take when my ball is in a bunker, and I'm allowed to touch the sand and I would not be penalized. So the first thing, I'm allowed to dig in with my feet, not excessively, but reasonably dig in with my feet to take my stance. And I could do that with or without a club. I say that because you could go in, take your stance for a practice swing or for the stroke. What you could not then do is kind of fill in your footprints and then take a different stance. You would be able to reasonably dig in with your feet to take a stance for the practice swing or a stroke. The next point is probably the hardest to understand. When my ball lies in a bunker, believe it or not, I could rake the bunker or smooth the bunker if I'm doing it to care for the course, and I don't improve the conditions affecting the stroke. And we'll see in a moment what those conditions are, but I'm going to explain them now. There are 5 conditions that affect the stroke, and those are listed under Rule 8.1. The first thing is the lie of the ball. I couldn't rake around where my ball lies in the bunker. The second thing is the area of the player's stance. I could not rake the area in which I would be taking my stance for the next stroke in the bunker. I could also not rake the sand to improve the area of my intended swing. Like if there was a lump of sand behind the ball, I could not rake that, even if it were to care for the course, because that would improve the area of my intended swing. I also can't rake on the line of play. It's the line I wish my ball to take. Usually it's from the ball to the hole, but the line of play, maybe a player is aiming away from the hole. It's wherever the player wishes, it's the line the player wishes his ball to take after a stroke. And the fifth thing I can't improve is the relief area if I was taking relief in an area in the bunker. So while I am allowed to smooth the bunker to care for the course, I have to be careful. I can't essentially do it the lie of the ball, the area of my stance, along the line of play, or in the relief area that I might be dropping in. Anywhere else in the bunker, I could definitely rake. I can also place my clubs, equipment, or other objects in the bunker, whether by throwing them in there or setting them down. This would include bringing my whole golf bag into the bunker. That is totally permissible. My golf bag with the clubs in it are my equipment, and this rule says I can place them down in the bunker. I just can't improve the conditions affecting the stroke. I can also touch sand in measuring. This player might be moving, he might be up against another player's ball and me moving his ball marker 1 club length away so that he can eventually replace his ball. I can touch sand in marking a ball. I can touch sand in lifting a ball, in replacing a ball, or taking any other action under any rule. I can also, believe it or not, lean on a club, provided I don't improve the conditions affecting the stroke, in order to either rest, stay balanced, or prevent falling. But again, be careful about the 5 areas of the conditions affecting your stroke. And lastly, for people like me, you know, this generally comes in, this is kind of a thing from Arnold Palmer in the Masters, but if I play a bunker shot and my ball is still in the bunker, prior to this year, if I smacked that sand in frustration or anger, that would have been a penalty because my ball was still in the bunker. Now, whether it's before I play the stroke or after and my ball is still in the bunker, I could strike the sand in frustration or anger. I realize that we don't want young men to do this, but they are young men, and if it does happen, there is no penalty because this says it's no penalty. And as I mentioned, when I touch the sand and not get a penalty, I only don't get the penalty if I don't improve the conditions affecting the stroke. And again, those conditions are the lie of the player's ball at rest, the area of the player's stance, the area of the player's swing, the player's line of play, generally between the ball and the hole. But as I mentioned, in a bunker, a player could be playing away from the flagstick and his line of play would be between the ball and where he wishes his ball to go. And then obviously the relief area within the bunker. Any questions on bunkers?
Yes, Bill, we've got a good one. This is with regard to that transition area from bunker to the general area. So what we've got is a ball lying in the earthen lip of a bunker is now considered to be lying in the general area.
Correct.
That's correct. If we could talk about this situation where often such a ball is embedded in that area, what options does the player have when a ball lies in that earthen lip of a bunker and is embedded?
Yeah, I mean, I know the USGA put out a clarification regarding this situation, and I'm going to check my phone real quick, and I have this instantly available. But you are correct. I mean, if my ball is in the earthen lip, I'm not in the bunker, therefore I'm in the general area. If the ball is embedded, I'm allowed relief for the embedded ball, which is Rule 16.3. That rule says that the reference point for taking relief is the spot immediately behind the ball. And then I'm allowed to drop within a 1 club length relief area. Now you have to remember, if that area is available, the player has to take it. And this gets a little technical, but I'll kind of go through it. If a player had an embedded ball and there was a spot behind the ball, not near the hole, not in the bunker, so in a part of the general area, because if my ball's in the general area, the relief must be in the general area. The relief must also be within 1 club length of and not near the hole than the reference point. And that relief area cannot also be in a bunker. It has to be in the general area. So if there was a sliver of ground, I would have to mark at least identify the reference point immediately behind the spot where the ball's embedded. I would then drop under the embedded ball rule, and the ball would have to come to rest in the relief area. And if it rolled into the bunker, it would be deemed to have rolled outside of the relief area. Then the dropping rule would require me to drop again. We went through that last week. You know, if I dropped in the right way from knee height, the player dropped it and it landed in the relief area. But came to rest outside the relief area, that drop would count and I would have to drop again. So now I would drop again the second time. And if I dropped in the right way the second time from knee height and it landed in the relief area and it rolled into the bunker, now Rule 14.3c would tell me that I need to place the ball where it landed on the second drop if the second drop also rolled outside the relief area. So in attempting to place the ball where it landed on the second drop, if the ball, when placed on the spot where it landed in the relief area on the second drop, came to rest, I'd be fine. If it didn't come to rest, and I tried to place it and it rolled into the bunker, I would attempt to replace it a second time. And this is all under Rule 14.3c. If the ball failed to stay on the position the second time, what that rule tells me, and I have it right here, I'll read it to you. It says, if the ball placed a second time also does not stay on the spot, the player must place a ball on the nearest spot where the ball will stay at rest, subject to the limits in Rule 14.2e. So then we would have to go to Rule 14.2e. And what does that say? It says if the player tries to replace a ball, but it does not stay on its original spot, the player must try a second time. If the ball again does not stay on that spot, the player must place the ball by placing it on the nearest spot where the ball will stay at rest, but with these limits depending on where the original spot is located. The spot must not be nearer the hole, and if the original spot was in the general area, which it is in our mythical example here, the nearest spot must be in the general area. So I would need to find the single nearest spot outside of the bunker where the ball will remain at rest. Depending on the situation, that could be a reasonably considerable distance from where the original ball had been embedded. So hopefully you kind of follow that. If you could check with the person if that has answered their question. And while you're doing that, I'm going to bring up the clarification that was brought up with regard to an embedded ball with a ball in a bunker. And I will read you the clarification because there's a subtle difference in what I'm talking about. Did he have a question, Tom?
Nope, nothing further so far. I sent him a note. If something else comes up, I'll let you know.
Okay, I'm just trying to find the clarification. And I can't. I know it was, might be in the committee procedures. It was part of the, here, I think I know where I can get it. Full rules, 16(1)(b).
And the answer is yes. Patrick's indicating absolutely. It could be a big advantage to a player knowing that rule. He's absolutely right.
I mean, but you can see how it's very complicated. There's a number of rules involved. The clarification to which I'm referring came out in December, and here's what they have to say. With regard to Rule 16.3b, which is relief from an embedded ball in a bunker, excuse me, in the general area, it says player not always allowed to take embedded ball relief. If the player's ball is embedded in the general area, but neither the reference point nor any part of the course within one club length of the reference point is in the general area, the player is not allowed to take free relief. Free relief, for example, free relief is not allowed if a ball is embedded at the very base of a lip wall or face above a bunker, and the spot right behind the ball is in the bunker, and within 1 club length of and not near the hole from that reference point, there is no part of the relief area that is in the general area. So what does all that mean? What they're saying is that in the very rare case, I could have a ball that would be embedded in the general area, right above a bunker, such that there's no point behind the ball that's in the general area. So the reference point itself cannot be in the general area. If that were the case, a player would either have to play the ball as it lies or declare the ball unplayable. If he declared it unplayable, he'd have to proceed under one of the 3 options under the unplayable ball rule, keeping in mind that his ball is in the general area. It's just that in the very rare example of where the reference point does not exist behind the ball. Do you kind of get what I mean by that?
I do.
Hopefully who's ever online. But that was a clarification that came out after the rules were printed. If there's no more questions, we'll move on to penalty areas. Obviously, these were formerly called water hazards or lateral water hazards. What used to be called a water hazard is now called a yellow penalty area. What used to be called a lateral water hazard is now called a red penalty area. And we have a number of videos within this and a couple of good pictures, but we'll move on. So what is a penalty area?
Red and yellow water hazards, 2 things that most golfers are pretty familiar with. Now, one of the big changes in 2019, though, is the introduction of this concept of penalty areas, the ability for committees to now mark additional areas with red lines. So I think 2019 moving forward, we're actually going to see more red lines on the golf course.
I think that's correct, and we'd be happy to see that. We on many golf courses around the world, you'll see areas such as this, difficult areas to find your golf ball, difficult areas to play from, and by being able to mark them as red hazards, we give the player a relief option outside of it. So just outside the red line, they can then drop under penalty of 1 stroke within 2 club lengths of that point of entry.
Yeah, I mean, this change is really all about giving some flexibility to the committee when it comes to defining their golf course. But because we are going to see more red lines, there's now the opportunity for players to find their balls in more situations, similar to this. If my ball is there, I may well want to play it. Yes. Right? Under the current rules, there are a number of things I can't do. I can't ground my club or move loose impediments. All those things come 2019 as part of the Rules Modernization Initiative. Those go away as well. So if a player wants to play their ball, they're now going to have the ability to do some things that today they wouldn't allow for. And again, I think just offering that flexibility to the player, you can play the ball as it lies, you can do all these things, or you can take relief under a penalty of 1 stroke. I think that's all important.
It is important, and a key element, a key theme throughout the modernization process was trying to speed the game up. And we think that these changes in and around penalty areas will do just that, make a wonderful game just that little bit quicker and therefore that little bit better.
So you can see that one of the big things this year is in addition to marking what's called a body of water, like the old water hazard rule, a committee could mark other areas of the course and define those and define the edge of those areas as penalty areas. And that is a wonderful change. I can tell you now, that part of this video was part of the previous video, but the point is, if my ball is in a penalty area, I can now, in playing the ball, and that's kind of a distinct phrase, In playing the ball from a penalty area, I can now take any action that I could take in the general area, meaning the fairway or rough. What does that mean? I can remove loose impediments, provided I don't cause the ball to move in doing so. I can make practice swings and touch the ground or water while taking those practice swings. I obviously can ground my club lightly behind the ball like I can in the fairway or rough, and I could even touch the water if that were necessary. And here's another video.
If you find your ball in a penalty area and want to play it from there, the same rules apply as when playing a ball from the fairway or the rough. So before making a stroke, you are allowed to move loose impediments, make practice swings that touch the ground or any water inside the penalty area, and ground your club near your ball.
One of the things, if anybody has a rule book, in the full rules of golf or the official guide, under Rule 17.1b, they spell this out very well. It says the player may either, 1, play the ball as it lies without penalty under the same rules that apply to a ball in the general area, which means there are no specific rules limiting how a ball may be played from a penalty area. Or the player may play a ball from outside the penalty area by taking penalty relief under Rule 17.1d or 17.2, which is the penalty area rule. Part of the reason why I say in playing the ball, I can take those actions. I'm not allowed, and they reference this under Rule 17 and also Rule 19, the unplayable ball rule. I am not allowed to declare my ball unplayable when it lies inside a penalty area or touches a penalty area. So that's an important distinction. If my ball is in a penalty area, I either have to play it or proceed under the penalty area rule under a penalty of 1 stroke, and in which case that would require me to drop outside the penalty area from which I'm seeking relief. So anytime my ball is found touching the edge of a penalty area or is actually inside a penalty area, why does it say this? Well, the key word there is found. So the ball has been found and is touching or is inside. I could take relief from a penalty area. Well, sometimes we don't find the ball in the penalty area, but it is known or virtually certain to have come to rest inside a penalty area, even though we might not find it. Known, excuse me, known is just that. The facts are known that the ball came to rest. Either someone, the player, another player, the opponent, a spectator. Some facts are known that the ball is indeed come to rest in a penalty area, or it's virtually certain that the ball came to rest inside a penalty area. What is virtually certain? Well, in the back of a rule book, it is now defined. And what it means is that you have a 95% reasonable assurance that the ball has indeed come to rest inside a penalty area. If that's the case, then relief is available. Obviously, as a high school coach, you'd want to teach your players, if it's possible to play from the penalty area, why wouldn't you play from it? Anything you can do outside the penalty area, you can now do inside the penalty area, including practice swings, removing loose impediments, grounding the club, everything. So that would be my first go around. And if I wasn't able to play the ball, I can then take relief under a penalty of 1 stroke outside the penalty area. And how do I do that? Well, first of all, there's 2 kinds of penalty areas. It's kind of a misunderstood concept that all penalty areas are red now. And that's not true. Penalty areas can still be yellow, and they can obviously still be red. The USGA, as we would as well, would highly recommend that the vast majority of penalty areas be marked red. Where are those instances where you would mark it yellow? Well, perhaps like an island green or a peninsula green, where you want to make sure that the player is negotiating the water with an actual stroke made and not a penalty stroke. So if I hit my ball into a penalty area, whether it's yellow or red, I have the first two options. The first is stroke and distance, and the second is back on the line. So in the picture, a player has hit a tee shot. It goes along the white line. Just like last year, we're still going to identify the point where it last crosses the margin, the edge of the penalty area. We're going to estimate that point, and that becomes the all-important point. Some of you may have heard of the expression line of flight. That's the flight of this white line. That means absolutely nothing under the rules. There is nothing in the rules that talks about the line of flight. If my ball is in a penalty area, I have three options. I can proceed under stroke and distance. If it's yellow or red, I can proceed under the back on the line relief, whether it's yellow or red. If it's yellow, those are my only two options, unless there's a dropping zone. And a dropping zone is simply an additional option under the penalty area rule. So the key here is the point where the ball last crossed the margin. Here is the hole on the green. That's going to form a line. Along that line, I have to drop a ball outside of the hazard behind this point, and then I would create a player-chosen reference point on that line and then drop in the relief area. And we'll see an example of this in just a second. And just like last year, if the penalty area is red, or what used to be a lateral water hazard, I'm going to have the 2 club length relief option from where the ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area. So now let's go through these procedures. If I proceed under stroke and distance, I'm going to have hit a ball into a penalty area from one of 5 areas of the course. If the stroke winds up in the penalty area and that stroke was made from the teeing area, I can return to the teeing area and play a ball from anywhere within the teeing area. That would be an example when we talked about the teeing area of being allowed to proceed under the teeing area rule. If that stroke was played from the general area, a bunker, or a penalty area, and the ball went into a penalty area, if I'm proceeding under stroke and distance, if I had played from the fairway, I'm going to return to the place of the previous stroke. I'm going to identify that point and then drop a ball within 1 club length of and not near the hole than where the original stroke was previously made. And this is all covered under Rule 14.5, playing from where the previous stroke was made. If the ball was played from a bunker and wound up into a penalty area, I'm going to go to the point where the ball was last played out of the penalty area, identify that point, and then drop within a 1 club length relief area, not near the hole than the reference point, which is the spot where the previous stroke was last made. Whether you believe it or not, it is possible to play a stroke from the putting green into a penalty area. Ironically, the #1 player in the world at the time this happened was Tiger Woods, and he had hit his second shot on the 13th hole at Augusta National. The hole location was in the front right. Tiger was in the back left of the green, and Tiger putted off of the green and into Rays Creek, the penalty area in front of the green. So he proceeded under stroke and distance and placed a ball on the spot from which the previous stroke was last made on the putting green, because that last stroke was made from the putting green. Hopefully we're clear on that concept. The stroke and distance option is available for either red or yellow penalty areas, and I obviously play from where the previous stroke was made in the examples that I gave. Now is probably the hardest concept out of all of them under the new rules, the idea of dropping back on the line. The old rules simply required me to drop anywhere behind the point where the ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area and drop a ball anywhere along that line. Well, we no longer drop a ball on a spot or on a line, we drop it in an area. So what a player does, and we're going to see here in a sec, you start by creating the reference line. It's a point that starts at the hole and crosses through the point where the ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area, and then I could drop anywhere behind that point.
When taking relief from a penalty area for one penalty stroke, one of your relief options in the 2019 rules is going back on the line. Follow these steps. Estimate the point on the edge of the penalty area where your ball last crossed as it went in. Imagine a straight line running from the hole through that estimated point and extending behind the penalty area. Go back as far as you like and identify a spot on that line. Measure or estimate a 1 club length wide relief area on either side of and behind that spot. In the 2019 rules, a club length is always the longest club in your bag except your putter. Then drop a ball in the relief area. Your dropped ball must land in and be played from the relief area.
So that was a wonderful video, and the girl even followed the steps. The hardest thing for people to comprehend is, why do I need to create this point X? And point X, the reference point, is the point at which the ball cannot roll any closer to the hole. It is a player chosen point that identifies the point that the ball cannot roll forward of, or it would need to be redropped because it would be outside the penalty area. This point is a point on the reference line chosen by the player. That's a key phrase. The player himself is choosing it. And I highly recommend that you have your players mark this point with a T or a coin or a divot repair tool or something that is the same thing as a ball marker, and identify that point. Because if the ball rolls forward to that point, you can see by the picture, it's rolled outside of the penalty area. So what happens if the player doesn't choose the point? So here you have a player who hit a ball into the penalty area. It last crossed here. So we're going to create the reference line, and we're going to figure out a place on this line to drop. If I don't put down the T or the coin to identify the reference point, your players are going to need to be extremely careful. Why? Watch this where the ball lands. So the ball is dropped, it lands at the white point X. So by the rule, the reference point automatically becomes the point on the line that is the same distance from the hole as the white point X. And then that is the start of the relief area, and that creates the 1 club length relief area. Can you see what happens that if I don't mark the red X, that point, and my ball lands at the white X, but then rolls closer to the hole, I don't care if it's a half an inch, a quarter inch, if it rolls any point forward of the point where it landed on the ground, it is automatically rolled outside of the relief area. Can you see that concept? I would think so. So the relief area, when you're using the back on the line option, is 1 club length measured from the reference point, which is this player chosen reference point. And that basically identifies the spot that the ball cannot roll closer to the hole than that area. Obviously, the relief area can't be nearer the hole than the reference point itself, which is chosen by the player and is a point on that line. There are 3 times a player can use the back on the line option. He can use it under this penalty area rule. He can use it under the unplayable ball rule. If you remember in the past, you could always drop behind where the ball lay unplayable, and you used to drop on that line. Now you're using the back on the line. You'd pick a point and drop in the relief area. Another example of where this could be used, if my ball lies in a bunker and I have interference from an abnormal course condition under Rule 16.1C2. If I wanted to, only under the condition that I have interference from an abnormal course condition when my ball lies in a bunker, I could drop outside the bunker under a penalty of 1 stroke and drop using the back on the line option behind the bunker and outside of it. But I can only do it if I have interference from an abnormal course condition when my ball lies in a bunker. What's an abnormal course condition in a bunker? The most likely thing you'd run into would be temporary water, what we used to call casual water. But it could also be an immovable obstruction. Sometimes the liner of a bunker, that's the kind of like vinyl-like stuff that is actually underneath the sand, if that becomes exposed, that is an immovable obstruction because the course does not wanting you removing the liner. So the 3 times I can use the back on the line relief are penalty areas, unplayable ball, or penalty relief from an abnormal course condition when my ball lies in a bunker. Lateral relief is available if the penalty area is identified as a red penalty area with either red stakes or red lines.
In the 2019 rules, when you take lateral relief from a red penalty area under a 1-stroke penalty, estimate the point on the edge of the penalty area where your ball last crossed as it went in. Starting at that point, measure or estimate your 2 club lengths relief area outside the penalty area that is not nearer the hole. In the 2019 rules, club lengths are the length of the longest club in your bag, except your putter, and then drop a ball in that area. Your drop ball must land in and come to rest in the relief area.
Okay, that was a great example because as you could see in that video, the relief procedure for lateral relief from a red penalty area, where I would drop is no different than what it was last year. I still identify the point where it last crossed the edge of the penalty area. Last year, I would have measured 2 club lengths and I would have dropped within that 2 club length area. That hasn't changed. The difference this year is that not only must I drop in that 2 club length area, the ball must come to rest within that 2 club length area. And again, the lateral relief reference point is where the original ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area. Then I get 2 club lengths from the reference point, and I have a limit on the location of the relief area. The relief area cannot be nearer the hole than the reference point. So obviously this hole kind of dog legs, if you can see at an angle that's perpendicular to this line. And I can drop in any area of the course except the same penalty area. And I want to drive home this point. What does this mean? If this penalty area had this margin right here, and my ball crossed right here, just like it did in the example. If the putting green was within this 2 club length area, not nearer the hole than the reference point, could I drop onto the putting green? Yes, as long as it's inside the relief area. That's what that means. Any area of the course. The putting green is one of the areas of the course. Similarly, if I wanted to, I could drop in a bunker. The one thing I can't do, I can't drop a ball in the same penalty area that my ball laid in when I'm taking relief from the penalty area under the penalty area rule. The whole purpose is to get you outside. Does anyone remember the Ricky Fowler scenario at the Phoenix Open? You know, he had hit a ball into a penalty area on his 3rd stroke. He took the penalty stroke and dropped under lateral relief, and his ball came to rest within the relief area. He then walked up onto the green, and with his ball at rest and in play in the relief area, several, maybe 10 seconds later, his ball rolled back into the relief area. Well, that's called bad luck, because your ball was in play, you had taken relief, but now it rolled back into the penalty area. So when he took relief the first time, the 3rd stroke went in, penalty stroke, he dropped 4. His ball rolls in again, but not as the cause of a stroke, but the penalty stroke a second time gets him out, which is number 5. He then hit his 6th stroke onto the green, and he made like a 20-foot putt for triple bogey. All awesome triple bogey, and wound up winning the tournament. So that's what we mean by any area of the course. Doesn't have to be the general area, just has to be somewhere other than the penalty area from which you're trying to get out of. New for 2019, a player can't use the opposite margin. The equidistant point on the opposite margin is no longer available by the rule itself. However, a committee can adopt the use of the opposite margin relief option, but must do so through a local rule. But you have to be careful. You can't make a blanket statement. On this course, we're going to allow you to use the opposite margin. You literally, under the local rule, you have to spell out each penalty area for which the local rule would be applicable. You can't make a blanket statement. You can't even say on 3 holes we're allowing you to use it, not elsewhere. You have to say the lateral, the red penalty area on the left side of the 6th hole as an additional option, the player may use the opposite margin relief option, something to that effect. And then that opposite margin relief procedure would be allowed, but only by local rule. Any questions on the relief area, on the penalty areas?
Bill, one question, and hopefully you can provide a quick one. We are getting short on time, and we've got a number of other things to cover.
Oh yeah, geez, I just noticed that.
Yes, if a player hits a ball into a red penalty area, it is tall grass, thick grass, finds the ball and decides to play it from the penalty area, hits it and loses the ball. after playing it from the penalty area, because he does not get it out of the penalty area, is that player allowed to go to a drop with an additional one-stroke penalty outside the penalty area?
Yeah, and that's covered, you know, if you were to open up a rule book, that's covered under Rule 17.2, just like it used to be Rule 27-2, I think. Anyway, you know, if the player's ball played from a penalty area comes to rest in the same penalty area, you have to remember, where does his ball lie? It still lies in the penalty area. And unless it crossed outside and came to rest back in, the point where it last crossed the edge is still the relative point. A player essentially at that point has two stroke and distance options, because under stroke and distance, the last stroke was made in the penalty area.
Right.
But the last stroke played outside of the penalty area was wherever it was played. It could have been the general area, it could have been the teen area, it could have been somewhere else. So you have all of the options available to you that you would have had you not played it. But all of that is covered under Rule 17.2. And that is entitled ball played from penalty area comes to rest in the same penalty area. And then there's another picture, ball played from penalty area comes to rest in same penalty area after having exited and re-entered. What that means is that you have a different reference point, but you still would be able to go back to the last place you played outside of the penalty area. And lastly, you could obviously have a ball that became unplayable or is lost or out of bounds after having been played from a penalty area. And all of those options are under Rule 17.2. And there's wonderful pictures and examples. We'll quickly move on to the putting green. Just like on the teen area, you can move sand and loose soil. When the sand and loose soil is on the putting green, and that is whether your ball lies on or off the green. But just like you can remove sand and loose soil in the teen area, you can remove it on the putting green, whether or not your ball is on the green. Anywhere else, you can't remove sand or loose soil.
The 2019 rules allow you to repair almost any damage on the putting green. In addition to ball marks and old hole plugs, you are allowed to repair spike marks and any other damage caused by shoes, repair animal damage, and repair damage caused by maintenance practices. The fixing and repairing of the putting green must be done promptly and must not improve your line of play beyond the repair of the damage.
So that's a great
The
video.
2019 rules.
Let me just make sure. Yeah. So what are the things that you can fix? The damage on the putting green that you can fix. Whether or not your ball lies on the green, you are now allowed to fix ball marks like you always could, but you are now allowed to fix shoe damage, spike marks or scrapes caused by shoes. You can fix scrapes and indentations caused by equipment, like if someone were to drop a club and it caused an indentation, or if somebody jammed the flagstick in the green and it created an indentation, you could fix that. You can also fix old hole plugs, like you always could, turf plugs, seams of cut turf. You can now fix animal tracks or hoof indentations from like deer or dogs or whatever. You can also fix embedded objects, provided the embedded object, and I see now it's spelled incorrectly, but you can fix embedded objects like a stone that might be pushed into the green, or an acorn or a tee. You could take a divot repair tool, remove the object, and then fix the hole that was created by the removal of that object. You can also fix hail damage. The key in fixing all of this damage is that you are allowed to take reasonable actions to repair that damage to restore the putting green to its original condition, but you can't create a pathway to the hole, meaning you can't take actions to exceed what is allowed in improving your line of play. But you are allowed to fix all of the items in blue. So that begs, what can't I fix? Well, aerification holes or grooves for vertical mowing. Can you imagine, Tom, if I had a 50-foot putt on a green and someone said you could fix aeration holes? How long it might take to fix all the aeration holes? So it makes sense that you're not allowed to fix them. But you can adopt a local rule that provides relief for the ball being in or on an aerification hole, and that's covered under the model local rules section. You also can't fix damage that is what we would call natural damage, irrigation or rain or other natural forces besides hail, because hail damage you can fix. You also cannot repair natural surface imperfections, such as weeds or area of bare, diseased, or uneven growth. And Tom, after this winter, we're going to have a lot of greens that have a lot of winter kill on them. And you are not allowed to repair winter kill. What a committee could do is, if there was a really bad winter kill area, I would check with the superintendent first, but a committee could identify that as being ground under repair. And you can't fix natural wear of the hole. Those are just the things that you can't fix. And this is all covered under Rule 13.1C. I can also now touch my line of play, whereas in the past I couldn't, whether it's in indicating an aiming point to play or simply touching my line of play when I'm on the putting green. And I can do it whether my ball lies on the putting green or not.
Under the 2019 rules, when you are assessing the line for your putt, there will be no penalty if your caddy or partner touches the putting green to point out where you should aim or how your putt will break. This includes touching the green with the flag stick.
So I could touch that green with the flag stick, a club, my finger, anything. I can touch the line of play or a reasonable extension along that line. There's also the most noticeable change we've probably seen, other than dropping on the PGA Tour or caddies getting penalized for standing on the extension of the line of play, is players putting with the flag in the hole, and that's now allowed.
Under the 2019 rules, there is no penalty for hitting the flag stick that is in the hole when you've played your stroke from off the putting green, or if you've played your stroke from on the green. So if you want to leave the flag stick in the hole, perhaps to save time or because you think it helps you, there is no penalty if your ball hits it. If your ball is not holed, play it as it lies.
Me personally, I feel like that's probably one of the best changes that's been made. A new situation for this year, if you look at the picture, we have a ball resting against the flag stick, and it's in the hole, but it's not completely below the level or the surface of the ground. In the past, I would have had to move or remove the flag stick and see if the ball fell into the hole. Under the new rules, if this situation occurs, just like this last sentence says, I could pick the ball right up. That ball is holed. I don't have to remove the flag stick. I don't have to move the flag stick. Under Rule 13.2C, that ball is holed. So a ball resting against a flag stick where part of the ball is in the hole, that ball is deemed to be holed or treated as holed. And lastly, a huge thing that you'll want to take note of is watch the video and we'll explain it.
After you mark, lift, and then replace your ball on the putting green, If it moves for any reason, including through your own accidental actions, or for some other reason such as wind. Always replace your ball back on its original spot. If you don't know the exact spot, estimate it as accurately as you can and replace the ball there.
Okay, the key here is normally when a ball is moved by natural forces, so wind, water, or gravity, I don't replace the ball. I play it from its new location. New for 2019, if my ball is on the putting green and I mean underline and, I have marked, lifted, and replaced my ball, and that ball is now on the green, whether or not I remove the coin, if that ball subsequently moves because of any reason, I am now what's called the owner of that spot, and I have to replace the ball. And that is only under the case where I've marked, lifted, and replaced the ball. If it then moves on the putting green, I always replace it. If that same thing happened off of the green, I would play it from its new location, but I wouldn't have marked it, lifted it, and replaced it. It's only on the putting green. New for this year is interference from a wrong putting green. In the past, it was only if I had interference if my ball lay on the wrong putting green. Now I also have interference if the wrong green physically interferes with my stance or swing. Well, no one swings that shallow, so it's really only the lie of the ball or your stance. This is a big deal because if my ball is off the green, a wrong green is any green other than the green of the hole I'm playing, the putting green of the hole I'm playing. Any other green on the course is a wrong green. If my ball were off of a wrong green, but I would be standing on it, I must take free relief because interference now includes my stance, and I don't have the option of playing the ball. I must take relief. And if I didn't take relief, I would get a 2-stroke penalty. So you can see here, player has a ball here. You figure your nearest point of complete relief for lie of ball, stance, and swing. That becomes the reference point. The relief area can't be near the hole. The reason why it doesn't extend over here is because the player would still be standing on the green. So this is the relief area. The relief area is not always a half of a circle. It could be a quarter of a circle or even less. Tom, do you want to quickly try to go through ball lost?
Yes.
Okay. Rule 18 is the rule that used to be Rule 27 for ball lost or out of bounds. And if a player's ball is lost or out of bounds, or the player proceeds under stroke and distance, we've already talked about it, but the procedure would depend on where you played that previous stroke. At any time, a player can take stroke and distance relief, and I'll give you an example. We had a tournament in 1998 where a player conceivably could have missed a 4-foot putt, and his ball would roll off the green, roll down the hill, and come to rest 100 yards from the hole. Well, whether it be the unplayable ball stroke and distance option, or simply proceeding under stroke and distance, if I missed a 4-foot putt and my ball was now 100 yards from the hole, I wouldn't need to play a stroke. I could simply take stroke and distance relief, go back to the place where the previous stroke was last made, and place the ball 4 feet from the hole where I had missed the first putt, and try again. So if the putt had been my 3rd stroke, that rolled down the hill, the 4th stroke is the penalty stroke, I'd now be putting 5. So new for this year is when a ball becomes lost. So we're going to show you when a ball becomes lost or when it's out of bounds. Unlike previous years when we had 5 minutes to search for our ball, this year a ball becomes lost if it's not found within 3 minutes after the player or his caddy begins to search for it. If I'm a player or a coach, I'm going to tell everyone, only because I have less time, come help me find the ball, or you help someone else if it's their ball. Get everyone possible involved and search frantically like your life depended on it, because you only have 3 minutes. What happens if I find the ball in 3 minutes and 10 seconds? Well, a ball is lost. If I find it in 3 minutes and 10 seconds, or I never find it, it's the same thing. If I don't find it within 3 minutes, the ball is lost. It's that simple. Obviously, we can have a ball be out of bounds. The stakes themselves are out of bounds. So all of a ball has to lie out of bounds in order for it to be treated as being out of bounds. If any part of the ball touches the course, whether it's by stakes or a line, the ball is in bounds. So this ball lies completely out of bounds. This ball lies completely out of bounds. This ball, even though part of it is OB, part of it touches the course, so he's in bounds, and obviously that is in bounds. If it's a painted line, the line itself is out of bounds. This infinitesimal little edge along this line is the actual edge. So this ball, as you can see, there's a little white in there. So this ball is out of bounds because the line itself is out of bounds. Obviously, this ball is OB. This ball is obviously on the course. And this ball, because part of it touches the course, is in bounds. And again, remember, all of the ball has to lay out of bounds in order for it to be out of bounds. If my ball is lost or out of bounds, I must, and I mean must, take stroke and distance relief. If anyone was watching last week when Phil Mickelson had a shot up against some OB fencing, it was kind of some vinyl fencing, temporary out of bounds, but it was out of bounds. He tried to play a right-handed stroke while standing out of bounds to his ball that was lying in bounds. And he wound up hitting that ball out of bounds. Well, when his ball was in bounds up against the fence, when that shot, the right-handed shot, went out of bounds, he was required to proceed under stroke and distance, to go to the spot right up against the fence where the ball had been, where he attempted to play the right-handed stroke. That was, we'll find the cursor, that was the reference point, because the ball was played from the general area. So that allowed him to then find the reference point and drop within a club length. Because he was able to drop within a club length, he was able to drop away from the out of bounds fence that you normally wouldn't get relief from. And because the fence was on the left side of the hole and he was lefty, he was able to actually make a full swing at the next stroke, and I think wound up making a bogey or a double bogey, if I'm not mistaken. Provisional ball. This is probably in high school golf one of the most misunderstood things. You're allowed to play a provisional ball if your ball, for two reasons, might be lost outside of a penalty area, or it might be out of bounds. Those are the only two reasons you can play a provisional ball. And you do that by playing a ball provisionally under a penalty of stroke and distance. So if I had played a ball from the fairway and my ball I knew went out of bounds, or it might have gone out of bounds, and I'm playing a provisional, I identify the original stroke, and just like I would if I were proceeding under stroke and distance, I would play provisionally within a 1 club length relief area from the spot where the previous stroke was made. And hopefully you understand that concept. For a ball that might be lost, this applies when the original ball has not been found and identified and is not yet lost. Well, sometimes we read words and we don't know what they mean. How about if I read this again? For a ball that might be lost, this rule applies when the original ball has not been found and identified and 3 minutes has not yet elapsed. How's that? Does that help you understand it better? Probably. What that means is that if I'm looking for my ball and I haven't found it or identified it, and 3 minutes has not passed, I could run back to the tee and play a provisional ball. That rule applies as long as I'm within the 3 minutes and the ball has not been found or identified. This rule also applies if the ball might be lost in a penalty area, but it also, and this is the important point, it might be lost somewhere else on the course. And this picture is the only thing that will help you understand. If I hit a tee shot from over here and that ball might be in the hazard, but it could also be lost in the trees here, the ball might be lost outside the penalty area. If I then subsequently get up there and I find that the ball was in the penalty area, well, I would then continue play with that original ball because my original was not lost outside a penalty area, nor was it out of bounds. Hopefully you understand that concept. However, if I play a provisional ball and I'm aware that the only place my original could be lost is inside of a penalty area, if I were to say I'm hitting a provisional, even though the only place it could be is in a penalty area, that's not a provisional ball. That is what we call a ball put into play under stroke and distance. So if your player's ball might be in a penalty area and it couldn't be lost anywhere else outside of the penalty area or be out of bounds, tell them not to play a provisional ball because they would want to proceed under the penalty area rule. Obviously, you have to announce that you're going to play a provisional ball. You can't just say I'm playing another ball or I'm playing again. You must use the word provisional. That's simple. If that's the only word that comes out of your mouth, provisional, you've met the standard for the rule. If you're a guy like me, you could turn to your group and say, I'm going to proceed under rule 18.3. Well, that meets the criteria too. Why? Because that's the provisional ball rule. If I don't announce that I'm playing a provisional, or I don't say the word provisional, and I play from where the previous stroke was made, that ball is in play under a penalty of stroke and distance. So just make sure they say the word provisional clearly to their fellow competitors, people in their group. I may continue to play a provisional ball up to a point where the original ball is likely to be or further from the hole that point. So if I hit an original ball from the tee and it's likely to be right here, that's a certain distance from the hole. So that creates an arc. I can play the provisional, striking that provisional ball either from here or anywhere outside this arc, because that is the same distance or further from the hole than where the original is estimated to be. And then depending on whether I find my original or not, that'll tell me whether my provisional ball is in play or is to be abandoned. And if my original ball is found on the course, whether it be in a penalty area or elsewhere, then I would continue play with the original. If I don't find my original and it becomes lost because 3 minutes has elapsed or it's out of bounds, then the provisional does become the ball in play. The provisional would also become the ball in play if I played it from a point closer to the hole than where the original ball was likely to be. And ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of today.
Bill, we've got one question
Sure.
still remaining. If anyone else has them, feel free to use Q&A or the chat. But and this one might be one for me, so maybe I'll take it first, and then you can add anything that you'd like to with it. But the question is, you mentioned that get anyone involved looking for a lost ball. During competitions, can you really have anybody, parents, spectators, etc., look for a lost ball? All right, and the answer is basically yes, as far as WIAA rules are concerned. The only thing where we limit is at the state tournaments so that parents and spectators aren't walking all over the course, as long as it's within the cart path area or close to it, where a spectator doesn't have to walk across a fairway and interrupt play. Anyone there within that gallery can look for a golf ball. And that includes coaches, players, parents, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, etc. As long as they're within the cart path area, they can look for a ball in tall grass or anywhere where it might get lost. The element that we do have to deal with is if it's across the fairway, then it is only coaches and players who have the opportunity to look for a lost ball in those areas. Bill, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, I'll add this. Under the rules, you know, it says when the player or his caddy begins searching for it, I have 3 minutes, right? Okay, well, the coach has the same status as the player or the caddy. He's part of the player's side under team competitions. So once the coach or the caddy, which there aren't any, or the player starts looking for the ball, the 3 minutes starts. If I'm a coach, under no circumstance, and I mean no circumstance, should you ever start looking before the player gets there. Why? Because if you do, the clock starts. You're part of the player's side. That's why I say wait till you have as many people that are allowed to search to begin the search. And then once you begin the search, you have 3 minutes to find the ball. And that time starts when you or a member of your side get to the area where your ball is likely to be. So the spectators are nothing more than, under the rules, what's called an outside influence. Last year, they were called an outside agency. They are someone on the course who's not part of the player's side. Similarly, in a stroke play competition, the other players in the group, the players with whom the player is playing, are also outside influences, as are their coaches. And so, honestly, under the rules, everyone is allowed to look for the ball. It's just that you want to be careful when you start looking. What I always tell players in tournaments, you know, if there's 4 caddies like there are at the state tournament, or there's a rules official, they're not part of the player's side. So they can start looking when the player's walking up from the tee, and that time does not count. The time only counts when the player or a member of his side gets to the area where the ball is likely to be, and then the clock starts. So you want to take advantage of the rules officials, the outside influences, the coaches that are not part of the player's side. That's what's called helping out a friend or another player, because that time does not count, and that time could be proving valuable.
Yep.
Is that kind of
as a follow-up to it, Bill? Sarah asked, so for instance, on the right side of number 15 at U Ridge, spectators and parents can help look for the ball, but they could not if it was lost or it was needed to be searched for on the left side. And that's correct. We wouldn't allow the spectators and parents to go to the left side of the green or the left side of the fairway in that wooded area that's on the left side of hole 15. But if there's an official, coaches, and players, they could go over there and search for that ball.
Yeah, and the distinction there, Tom, is under the rules of golf, there's no preclusion as to who could search or where they could search. The rule you're talking about is a WI regulation, not a
Yes.
rule of golf. And
Yep.
to Sarah, if you can hear me, that is an important distinction. It is not a rule of golf, it is a WI regulation. And they're allowed to do that, but you can also have the other coaches or the other players look for the player's ball before the player or his coach gets to the area. And you can't kind of stall back, letting the other players, you have to take reasonable amount of time to get to the ball. And then once you're in the area where the ball is likely to be, that the clock starts, so to say.
Great questions. Any other ones that anyone has, feel free to type them in. Otherwise, I'm just going to remind everyone that our next session is going to be next week, Tuesday, March 19th, 3 o'clock until 4:30ish once again. Bill has a number of good topics, including abnormal course conditions, embedded ball, unplayable ball, preparing for and making stroke with the alignment, to discuss that issue next week, along with clubs and balls, to look that over, and then any other miscellaneous items that might come up.
We're also going to talk a little bit about what to do or how the new procedure for playing preferred lies is as well.
Great, good one. So if there isn't anything else, we will end this session. I'll give folks just another minute just to see if anything else comes in, but please be reminded that you can also email us. It's bill@wsga.org or myself, T. Shafransky, at wiaawi.org. And we're glad to answer any other questions that you have and make sure you're getting the right information out there. Also want to just remind you of the Coaches Clinic coming up at Century World on the 23rd. Both Bill and I will be there. And I talked to Dennis Tiziani today. He's excited to be able to provide some great lesson work for high school golf coaches. And he's preparing well for that. I think it's going to be a great day at Century World, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone there. So with that, I don't see anything else coming forward. Bill, anything else you want to share at all?
No, I didn't know Dennis was going to be at the meeting. I always love spending time with Dennis.
Me too. Me too. It's great to have him joining us, and Brian Scrobel's putting it all together. So I think it's going to be a great day up here in Point. And I hope there's a little bit of green grass for everybody to see.
Boy, are you optimistic.
That would be inspirational. So, but thanks very much. You guys go have a great evening. And just a second here, I might have one more question. Hang on. That came. Nope. I just one comment. Very helpful webinar. Everything worked. We got everything working. You're welcome, everyone. And tell your friends, tell the other coaches. Feel free to join us next week, Tuesday. We'll plan to see you then at 3 o'clock. Have a great weekend. And if you want to, come to the state boys basketball tournament. I'll be there too. Bill, thanks again.
Oh, no problem. Didn't I see Brian Scrobel's Brookville Central Lancers made it?
They are. They are there. It's going to be a heck of a weekend.
Yeah. Well, it's always one of the big, that the basketball tournament and the football tournament are just huge. And
it's huge. It's a great way to wrap up the winter sports season, and just awesome excitement.
And it's at the Kohl
says
Center,
Goal
right?
Lancers.
It's at the Kohl Center, is it not?
At the Kohl Center. Yep.
Oh,
yep.
that's
We'll be there
gotta be. Oh, that's awesome. I mean,
Thursday through Saturday night. Yep. It's
to
a
play
fun
the
couple of days.
To play the football at Camp Randall where the Badgers play, and to play the basketball at the Kohl Center.
And golf at University Ridge. It's pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, that's just cool.
As they prepare for the AmFam Championship. Nothing like it.
Right. That's awesome.
All right, bud. I'll see you next week. If anything else comes up, you feel free to let me know.
All right, perfect.
Thanks, everyone. See you next Tuesday.